Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. The show is designed to give you solutions to your day-to-day management and leadership problems. It's hosted by Matthew Haddock, a frontline manager and leader with over 25 years of experience. If you're ready, then let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show, a weekly show designed to help you as a manager and a leader become the best version you can by giving you the tools to deliver the results you need. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode and share it with anyone else you think might benefit. Right, without any more delay, let's get on with this week's show. Welcome to this week's show. I hope you're all feeling well and not under the weather like I am. A little bit of a croaky voice today, so if you hear a bit of coughing, don't worry, I'm trying my best, to soldier through, as you do as a leader. So, what's bringing you to this week's show? Well, this week's show is around conflict resolution. So, a couple of podcasts ago, I talked around what causes conflicts inside workplaces. What are the drivers which really get things going? And this week, I want to walk you through the ideas of how you can, as a leader, have a strategy to make sure that these conflicts are resolved, especially at work. We know that there's conflicts everywhere. People face conflicts and there's always clashes. But in work especially, it can really be a point where you can have a lot of trouble. So it's really important that as a boss, you know that these challenges are going to land on your door and you need to make sure that you've got some strategies and some tactics to try to sort these out as soon as you can. Now, there'll be some minor conflicts in work, and sometimes they're not even worth causing or call them conflicts. If you think of how many times somebody has an argument about the air conditioner being too hot or too cold, or somebody not putting the staplers back in the staples machine, if we still use staples, maybe we don't anymore. A majority of them can be basically dealt with pretty easy. But then, of course, you go up that ranking to some things that cause major problems, which could lead to a real bust-up. So if you think of conflict outside of the normal working thing, if you think of conflict in a global sense, let's think of it in a sense of peace and war. You've got the idea where you've got this happy, real life kind of situation where there's peace. Now, you might argue there's never really any peace. Everyone's got some sort of, axe to grind. But you might have a peace, a sort of stability, and then if you imagine a curve going up, a bit of a bell curve, you may have instability, you might have some sort of crisis as it moves up that one, then it gets worse and there's tension, there may be a build-up of forces and rhetoric gets ramped up and things get worse and worse, and then, God forbid, there's then a war would break out and there's an actual, if you think of it, a major war, which might be engulfing an area or countries. And after that, after a war, there is always a change. Whatever happens, there's an end. And you might have an enforced peace where things are just split up for a while. Then you might have peacekeepers, if you think coming down the curve. Then you have a post-conflict rebuild and then a reconciliation. So if you can remember that, all conflicts has a resolution point. So every conflict in the world, in every conflict between people, there is a resolution. And I truly believe that. Now, some of that resolution may be the fact that a person ends up leaving, if you take it back to a business sense. So they actually leave the business because they can't. And that's pretty extreme. But a lot of conflicts are in the point where they can be resolved. You can talk through it. You can get some common ground. You can go through that idea of peacekeeping and post-conflict rebuilding and get to a point where you've got peace back in your office or in your environment or your work. And as a team manager or a team leader, you've got to keep an eye on these conflicts because the minor ones around the stapler and the aircon can build up, and soon you're going up that curve before you've got some skirmishes before all hell breaks out and you've got a whole-on office war going on. And nobody wants that, do they, in work? So what I want to do is go through a top 5 of what I consider the conflict resolution strategies that you should consider when you have these things going on around you. Because unless you're completely blind to it, you know conflict to be there. And the real art of this, and it's something that's difficult to teach, is when to get involved, when to step in as a manager, and when to really kind of ramp up and make sure that you're kind of damping this down. And realistically, you've got to make sure you go through a process of resolving it, not just disguising it or hiding it. So there's 5 tips I think is a good point to start when it comes to any kind of conflict. And the first one in this conflict is don't ignore the conflict, funnily enough. If you leave it, as we've just said, it'll start to fester over time. There'll be repeating things happening. It'll start to grow. It can spread. Conflict can easily spread from one area to another. So, a couple of people who are falling out in the office, then they've got friends who fall out, or maybe families work in the place. That can ramp it up. And that growing spread creates this toxic environment that can really go from what you consider a minor situation into a full-out office catastrophe. So as a leader, you can't bury your head in the sand. You can't just wait and see if it blows over. You might think at first it's easy to ignore it. Let's hope it goes away. And maybe you think it has. Sometimes you think, oh, that's brilliant. It seems to have resolved itself. Well, I'll tell you it hasn't. It's probably still there, but people are festering on it. So not to ignore it. You need to deal with it as a manager. I mean, that does sound simple. No, let's just deal with it. But, it's never easy when people are involved, when egos are involved, as we spoke around in conflicts. That can be a big driver, and people's ego can be very bruised very quickly. So you've got to be aware of that. So first number one in the step is don't ignore the conflict. And then the second one, which moves towards that more practical steps, is let's try to clarify what the issue is. So this is, if you think of in any investigation, it's getting the facts. It's time to get to the root of what the issue is. What's causing this conflict? What is the problems? Is it lots of small issues that are building up the tension? Probably. Is it like a pressure cooker that you've been having these small bits, and then boom, there's an explosion. Something really goes wrong. Now, just to point out, most pressure cookers, or all pressure cookers, have a pressure relief valve. I'm not saying you should have pressure relief valves at work, but let's think of how you're going to deal with it. If this is going to get pressured, you need to step in and resolve it. And I would say the first thing you need to do is sit down with each of the people involved who have been involved in this conflict and get their individual perceptions and obviously their views on what the situation is through their lenses. So try to see their worldview. It will be different from yours and maybe miles apart, but you need to listen to their views. Ask open questions. Ask them around what's the situation, what's going on. Have a word of, what do they think could be the solution? What could be something that we could put in place to try to fix this thing? So that's the second point, which is clarify the issue. And then the third one, which is when you're really stepping into a very hard area. This is bringing the involved parties together. Now, remember, I suppose a bit of a caveat in this is if this is someone who is actually bringing in a grievance or has made a statement that something has happened that's inappropriate at work, this might not be a step you'd take at this point. This is when you get your conflicts are happening. You've seen them as a manager. You start to bring those guys together. And the next step is to get them together to talk through each side's view. Respectfully and actively listening. So get each side to actively listen to what the other one's saying. So the goal is to come up with a common understanding of what each part of these people play in a situation. You can't fall out with yourself. Although I think I know some people who can fall out with themselves. But normally, in normal civilization, you have to have two parties to have an argument. Arguing upon yourself is something completely different and not for this show. So you've got to try and get those people to listen actively, respect the other one, try to get to the idea of what the common understanding of what the problem is. So you're working with them. You're a bit of a mediator at this point. Can be difficult if you're a boss and high up. So this might be where you coach another person to mediate, to go through it. But as a leader, let's not shy away from the fact you're going to have to deal with these issues at some point. So why not be there? Be the mediator, talk it through. I mean, the worst thing you can sort of probably say at this point is, oh, sort yourselves out. God, you're supposed to be grown people. Get on with it. That's just back to point number one. You're hiding. You're putting your head in the sand. So you get them together, talk through it, and then try to identify the solution. So point 4, identify a solution, something that's sustainable. Look at an idea of a sustainable resolution. It might be something that both parties will have to work on. Remember that at work, you don't have to be best mates. You don't have to be buddies for life. But you need to be able to work long-term together in a peace. And you can't always have peacekeepers watching the situation forever. So you need to have a point where those people can work on it, get to the resolution that they need and move forward. So point 4 is identify a solution that both parties to agree to, sign them up to it almost as we may say as a peace deal. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to treat each other in the future. And this is what we're going to do. Now, the last point of this, and this again is another skill you need, is around the continue to monitor. So although you've put this great plan in place, you've got them together, they've both shaken hands. They don't have to shake hands, but if they do, they do. And you've identified a solution that you think is sustainable and both parties have signed up to it. You've got to make sure you monitor it. So you need to follow up, you need to check, observe behaviours, keep an eye on what's going on, look for feedback outside the norm. Is it happening? Will it come back again? Have you fixed this problem forever, or has it just been, again, back under the surface? So, we need to make sure communication is key, that we're getting this conflict resolution, and then we're getting commitment from them to make sure that they are going to take the steps that they say they're going to take to resolve this problem. And always think of the ownership of the situation. If you want to avoid complete war, you have to be there. You need to make sure the peace happens because it's your work, it's your team. Remember what we're here for. We're here to deliver results, and most of the time that's through others. So if they're in conflict, they're spending their energy and all their resources in fighting each other. They're not going to be adding to what you need, which is delivering the results at work. So this is one of the ideas that we really need to be going through is at the end of it, monitor it, and if it doesn't work out, you need to go back round the points. So just as a refresher at the end, so what are the 5 points of conflict resolution? Answered on a postcard. No, the first one, don't ignore the conflict. The second one, clarify what the issue is with the individuals. Third one, bring the individuals' parties together with agreement. The fourth one, identify a solution which is sustainable. And the fifth one is continue to monitor the situation going forward. Well, thanks for listening. And as always, it would be great to get your feedback on the show. Not just this show, any of the shows. So please, if you can, take the time to send me an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com. Answer all the emails myself and would love to engage on new and old topics. And remember, whatever you've heard today, if you don't put into action, it's not worth listening to. So please go out there, try these points and let me know how it goes. Well, that's it for Manager Matt this week. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this Manager Matt podcast. We hope you found it interesting, helpful and actionable. One last thing, please leave a quick review on iTunes or with your podcast provider as it helps to spread the word of Manager Matt. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you did like anything in particular, send an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com or visit managermatt.co.uk for more content. Feedback is a gift, so let's keep giving. See you next week.